Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Ottawa. And for the first time in this show's history, we get to say that the Sens are headed to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Maude and Mike here once again. How are you feeling, Mike, after the Sens have finally clinched?
As I basically just said just before the stream started, probably the happiest we've ever been in a loss, and I think for
Definitely.
very good reasons. Because losses the past couple of years, they've been plenty. They've been annoying. We could very easily point to people as to why, people to blame. Today, the blames have been mitigated. The happiness is flowing because somehow the hero that ended up saving the day for the Sens is Brendan Gallagher scoring on the empty net.
Oh God, what a guy. We love him. We love him now.
No,
He
no.
helped us
We
out.
actually hate everyone in Montreal equally. We just dislike Detroit more.
Yeah, luckily it was against Detroit because I felt like the Rangers were chasing down the wild card spot as well. If it was cheering for Montreal against the Rangers or the Blue Jackets or something like that, I would have felt more dirty. But at least Detroit cannot catch us now, and they probably won't even be able to catch Montreal with that loss directly to them. So things are looking good, and we can say that the Sens are officially in the playoffs after 8 long years of a rebuild, of years of trying to come out of the rebuild when we thought that it was going to be over, through all the bad trades, the bad goaltending, the questionable drafting, so much of that for 8 years. We're here. So after all of that, it's going to be a fun show despite the loss tonight, 5-2 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. It ultimately will not matter. I think in a 3-game set against the Blue Jackets, after we took the first two in pretty convincing fashion in that second game there, it made sense that they were going to be energized to play for pride in the third game here. They didn't want to get swept in the season series. So I think it's not the worst loss ever for the Sens tonight, even though it's a bit of an ugly one on the scoreboard. We'll get into that later, but for now, I think we just gotta keep saying we're in the playoffs. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And usually we would not hit this button after a loss, but it feels like a win that the Sens are in the playoffs. The Columbus Blue Jackets did not get sensed tonight, but I'm going to say that the National Hockey League has been sensed because we're back in the playoffs, baby. You can't stop us. We're back, and hopefully we can get some awesome sensing in the playoffs. Oh my God, I'm just so excited. Where do we go from here, Mike?
I think the first thing we can just get off, let's try and go over the game with Columbus pretty quickly, just because I think we're going to be mostly talking about the playoff picture now that we can officially talk about it. It's not, 99% chance, 100% chance, yet still not clinched. Well, let's go over the Columbus game, and just for context, Maud will talk about it as well. I actually tuned out towards the end of the third period because I wanted to watch the Habs game, just to see what the situation was. Obviously, I was excited to see, what the situation would be. I didn't want to just doom scroll on Twitter to find out that the Sens, clinch, didn't clinch. I'd much rather just see the game. So I basically watched majority of the game, not all the game. But I think it's safe to say that definitely in the first and second period, the Sens, I don't think they played badly. It was just a slow start from Forsberg, which I can give him that considering how good he's been playing recently. Not to mention, Ullmark has had a lot of slow starts as well, so I'm not too annoyed by that. Plus, it was very much just a tough night for the bottom pair, for Clevin and Matt and Paolo. They had a lot of miscommunications, a lot of small mistakes that led to bigger mistakes that led to the goals that were scored by Columbus. And Columbus were very clearly, the more incentivized team because they were the team that, they didn't have the opportunity like the Sens did to rest on their laurels. They had to win this game if they wanted to keep up their chances of making the playoffs. I'm pretty sure they're still mathematically in it because the second wildcard spot in the East still isn't mathematically finished. But I'm pretty sure with Montreal winning and the odds for both Detroit and Columbus are basically less than, I think it's 40%. I think it's just
Yeah.
basically the Canadians have to crash out and Columbus or Columbus or Detroit would have to win every game. So
Yeah, Rangers, Detroit, and Columbus are all 9 points behind the Habs,
yeah,
with one game in hand. But like, that's only 5 games left that you can get 10. So it's literally just like a 2 point thing for the Habs here. They just got to pick up 2 more points and they're safe as long as they hold the tiebreakers. If they don't hold the tiebreakers over anyone else, then they could lose one. But I mean, it's looking pretty safe that the Sens and the Habs are going to be the wild cards.
yes, pretty confidently.
I was being a major hater and hoping that we could get the Habs slipping out of the playoffs, but they're just too hot right now.
Yeah.
So props to them, and they did the Sens a solid tonight because the Sens really weren't helping themselves too much. Like those first 2 periods, like you said, I don't think they were that bad overall, especially the second period. I thought that the Sens were actually really
Yes,
good.
the first was the worst
period.
100%.
The first one, like, they weren't outright bad, but it was just mistakes that killed them. Like, I don't think there was really any grade A scoring opportunities for Columbus other than the goals that they scored. It was just those mistakes, and also the offense didn't generate too much in that period, where it was the second period where the offense really came alive, which was nice to see because when you go down 2-0 early in a game, you don't want it to become a blowout. Unfortunately, It did, but we did briefly get within 1 goal thanks to Fabian Zetterlund. We might as well focus on that as the one positive for tonight. Is we finally
for the
got,
playoffs especially. Yeah.
We finally got the Fabian Zetterlund goal. It took 13 games or something like that now. How many has it been? I can't even remember, but I think he's up to 3 points with the Sens now. And through his first 12 games or whatever it was without scoring, he was probably as impressive as you could possibly be for a winger who's not scoring goals, right? So awesome to see him get the monkey off his back, and it's funny how it ends up being kind of a greasy one off a rebound, just jamming away in front of the crease on the power play, because he had so many more clean looks in the previous games, but sometimes you just got to be in the right place in the right time and get a bounce, eh?
Yeah, and that was one of those plays where it was very similar to the goal that Columbus ended up scoring later, where even though Columbus's was a little bit luckier with that goal with I think it was Matthew Olivier where it deflected off his skating in. Obviously, it wasn't the same circumstance, but kind of the point is that it was just a shot where it bounded off of something, and you basically got enough net front position where you had an opportunity to score if the puck went to the right place. And in both cases, in the Olivier goal as well as the Zetterlund goal, it was the puck went to the right spot, and you got the kind of the puck luck to score. Now, Zetterlund's was a little bit more natural in the sense where I think it was a bounce off the boards or it was a bounce off of a pad, but either way, it was rebound, and then he kind of just tucked it into the open net, while Olivier's was him just basically positioning himself to the left of the net, and then off of a shot that's already deflected, to deflect off this skate and go as it goes in. So all I can say for Zetterlund is that he's, despite the fact that he hasn't been putting up a lot of points, there's multiple reasons as to why. He was pretty unlucky in general in terms of the shots he's putting on net not going in. But on top of that, he also played a lot on the fourth line when he first came over. And he really shifted too, because I don't think there's many situations in the game where you'll see a team that's in the playoff picture have their fourth line left winger become their first line left winger just for a period of time. Usually that happens. You'll see that happen in the case of major injuries, which Tkachuk is, but not in the sense of I would expect that more if it were a team that was just we lost our top player, we're out of the playoff picture, we might as well put this guy up there to see what they can do.
Yeah,
we've seen that in our time. Yeah, we've seen that in our time in previous years. Mm-hmm. So, I'm pretty happy with how Zetterlund's been playing. He's been playing pretty solid. The only thing I would say is that I don't think that first line still works. But the reason I'm not focused on it is because we know that's not the first line. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the first line whenever Tkachuk comes back. If anything, I hope that the effort that Zetterlund has put in is rewarded, where he gets put on the line with Tkachuk and Stützle. I think that would be the ideal line. I think Claude Giroux, despite the fact that he assisted on the Zetterlund goal today, I think it's evident that he's, the age is catching up with him. Not to the point where he's not, he's still a top 9 player on this team, very evidently, but I don't think he should be penciled into the first line like he has been recently. I think he deserves a little bit of time on the second or on the third line. But I also completely understood why you wanted to keep him that way, because if you if you were winning before, which they were, you want to keep things the same, right? And
Yeah,
Zetterlund still
and
was the
heading into the playoffs too, you're gonna want Giroud for those like defensive and penalty kill minutes too.
Yes. Yeah.
So to be honest, sliding Giroud down the lineup to like second or third line, I think could be like the best use of him in the playoffs. And yeah, on the topic of Zetterlund, you briefly mentioned. It's interesting because they broke up that top line before he scored tonight, and the goal didn't end up coming on the power play, so it's a bit of a moot point for whether that actually made a difference. But they were sticking with Giroud, Stützle, and Zetterlund for like 6 games straight, and the production just wasn't there, despite the eye test being pretty good for Zetterlund and him getting a lot
they
of
weren't
shots.
bad, but
It's just like at a certain point you have to have the production, right? And we saw it as well with Tim Stützle's stat line lately. I don't think he got a point tonight, so I think that's only 1 point in the last 7 games. And I really think he's missing Tkachuk because even though Zetterlund didn't produce on the first few games on that line when Tkachuk was still playing with Stützle and him,
they look dynamic.
I think, yeah, they look dynamic, and Tkachuk just adds so much to that line. I feel like Timmy needs Tkachuk back. Now that the monkey's off his back, yeah, the whole team does. And now that the monkey's off Zetterlund's back, I think we might see that line reunited. Like they did a bit of a shuffle tonight where they switched. I think it was switching Cozens and Stützle. And then the winger pairing stayed the same. I don't think that I saw anything really impressive out of either of those lines at 5v5 after they made the change. So personally, I think when Tkachuk is back, if we just go back to Tkachuk, Stützle, Zetterlund, now that Zetterlund is settling in a bit and got the monkey off his back, I think that could be a pretty good look. And especially, you got to have faith in Perron, Cozens, and Batherson on that second line as well. Even though they got broken up tonight, it was kind of like... It
wasn't because they're playing bad.
Yeah, it was just because we needed a different look to
we
try
needed
to
switch
stir
things
up in the game. And I feel like it was more because of wanting to change up the first line than it was changing up the second line.
It changes stuff all around the lineup as soon as you change any line. So
So that'll be interesting going into the playoffs, is what they decide to do with the forward lines going forward. I think Zetterlund's got to stay in the top 9 at least. Like when he started on the 4th line, he was pretty decent in a checking role, but you could tell that that line just wasn't going to produce any offense because, it's with Gaudette and Highmore. Of course, he didn't produce in those first 5 or 6 games there.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing how Zetterlund would fit alongside Nick Cousins when he gets healthier, but that wouldn't be something that I'd want to see, if that makes sense. I think we can see from how Zetterlund's played with us that he should, ideal top 6, I'm okay with top 9. Now, the problem there is that we also really like the way the third line is playing with Greg Pinto, Amadio. That seems to be, our middle 2 lines seem to be our most set in stone right now.
Yeah,
now, but then that leaves a problem where if you're going to change the other lineups, you don't want to move a first liner to your 4th line. You kind of have to break up something in the middle 6. So we'll have to wait and see what Staios thinks is the best decision when it comes to this, but we have plenty of time to experiment too, which is the nice thing about clinching here. We have games to test stuff out.
We can test things out and we can rest players too.
Too.
Nick Jensen has been laboring for 2 weeks, and now I don't want to see him again until game 1 of the playoffs. Let that man rest.
Hamonic, top pair. Rest of the season.
Literally just play Hamonic 25 minutes a night for the last 4 games of the season, and I don't give a crap.
Give him the power play role. Make him the power play quarterback. Make him the late PK. Well, probably not. I think you probably still want to play decent for your seeding. And maybe putting Hamonic as your number 1 focus on everything is not a good idea. But rest Jensen.
Too, just
play
rest
Gilbert,
whoever
100%.
you can.
Yeah. Play Gilbert. Move Crookshank up the lineup. I'd love to see how Crookshank plays in the top 6 because we kind of have had to keep him on the 4th line recently. I'd love to see how he would play maybe along Stützle. Why not, right?
Yeah, we did get 1 game with that earlier in the season, and I thought they were decent, but it was against Winnipeg and Hellebuck.
Yes,
so
that Chicago upcoming game that we have should be full experimentation from Staios.
Yes.
Or that's basically your playoff lineup. One of the two. It has to be one of those two. This upcoming game against Montreal, I don't blame if they go for a more standard lineup because this is more of we want to make sure we get the number 1 wild card, not the number 2.
Yeah, they want to stay ahead.
Yes, but even then, at this point, I don't care if we're wild card 1 or 2. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I have full confidence. Well, maybe not full confidence, but I'm not mad about who the Sens play. And I think we can talk about it later in terms of playoff matchups and who we think are the best teams the Sens should or could face. But I'm literally just happy to be in the playoffs. Give us whatever team, and I'm confident in this group they'll do their best given their circumstances. And even if they don't, this is the step we've been waiting for them to take for like the past 8 years. And while we expected this to happen 2, 3 years ago, it's happened. And it's happened, thankfully, because a lot of change has happened in the organization. And obviously we'll talk more in depth in that too in the future. I might do something with my own video. Make sure to stay tuned to the Game Over Ottawa channel. You might see something specific from me. But yeah, like this has just been a great overall year. I think it's official. I think we can say it now. This year is a full success.
Oh, 100%. And you know what? I was looking up, this would have been more interesting if we won tonight, but I pulled up the list of every Sens season on Hockey Reference to sort by the most wins. They're on 42 right now. Would have been a little more interesting if they won tonight to move up to 43 wins, because if they can get to 45 games or 45 wins, which is tougher because there's only 4 games left, they would have to win 3 out of 4 as opposed to only needed 3 out of 5 if they won tonight. If they get to 45 wins, that's the 5th highest win total in the entire history of the Sens franchise, which like we've just been talking about, like, oh, we'll be happy to just squeak into the playoffs, but if they finish the season strong, it is legitimately like a top 5 or damn near top 5 regular season in Sens history.
Yeah, and not to mention too, as was pointed out by many people online, this is a team that has so many players who have never played in the playoffs before. And if there's one thing we know about the playoffs is that you'll have players who you don't expect to rise that will rise. I mean, same with fall, so we'll see how certain players play. But the nice thing about the Sens is so much of the team is question marks, which is just going to be exciting to watch. We'll be able to see Tim Stützle's first playoff series, Brady Tkachuk's first playoff series, Thomas Chabot's first playoff series, Dylan Cousin's first playoff series. There's Jake Sanderson's first playoff series. We have so many people we can look at and basically see, like, okay, who is the first person of like the modern Sens era in playoffs who is going to be like the playoff hero? Like, even if it's just for one game, even if it's just like, oh, we end up falling to wildcard 2, we face off against Washington, they beat us in 6, right? We have an OT winner. Who is the OT, like, who scores the OT winner?
Yeah, like, everyone remembers so fondly the Kyle Turris overtime goal against the Rangers in what was it, 2012, right? And we lost that series, but that's one of the most memorable moments of the Sens, like, since 2007, right? So
I just have to raise this up, and you'll probably know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
The Peugeot 4-goal game against Montreal, like that. Or sorry, it was against New York. Sorry, against New York, not Montreal. But
he had the hat trick against Montreal too. So sometimes these guys, these guys who are not necessarily top 6 players on the team step up. And like about the Kyle Turris one, it's like we didn't win that series, and it didn't end up being like a super successful era for the Sens until the good year in 2017.
But it was entertaining. It was fun to watch.
It was entertaining. It was so memorable. So that's what's so exciting, is that even if we lose, as long as we win like one game in the playoffs, there's going to be a great moment. There's going to be a hero, someone scoring the game-winning goal that will be like enshrined in Sens history, even if we don't win the series, or a great goaltending performance from Ullmark or something like that. So it's going to be awesome.
Expectations are going to be low for the playoffs, but that's what makes it so fun to watch as a fan. Because then, if your expectations are low in this case especially, and the Sens don't do well, they made the playoffs. They made a big step this year. They ended their playoff drought, and the boys are clearly improving like year by year. If the Sens win a couple games, still lose, we can point to those wins and cherish them for the rest of the year up until the new season starts. If they win 2 rounds, they're going to be winning against teams that they should, at least by the standings, they should never beat. Teams like Toronto, who are fighting for the President's Trophy, or at least leading the division right now. The 2 Tampa teams who have both won cups in recent history. Washington, who have obviously Ovi breaking the all-time goal scoring record, and also have their own historic season. I'm pretty sure they literally secured the President's Trophy today. So like they're the President's Trophy team, and as we all know, the President's Trophy's curse is a real thing. So honestly, any team, I'm happy with any team. And as long as the Sens don't get swept, I think everyone will be fine. Even if they get swept, I don't think it'll be frustrating, but you
But
can
it will still
say,
be
like,
a win on the season, right? A successful
exactly,
season.
yeah.
And since we started listing off the playoff opponents there, I figure we might as well just stop talking about the
Yeah.
fucking Ottawa Columbus game. We're already done with this trash
Yeah.
game that we just watched. Let's
I
get
missed
into...
the Shabbat goal. How was it? That's the one thing I want to ask, though.
It was nice. Batherson, he blew past Eric Goodbranson and just got stopped
Wait.
on a breakaway, and then Shabbat was crashing the net and tapped
Someone
in.
skated
So-
past Erica Branson?
yeah, it was a classic. We've seen that one before.
Yes, we've seen that one before.
Some
Ottawa
beautiful
native Erica
memories.
Branson helping the Sens. I mean, not
Yeah.
really, but...
So yeah, we might as well just get into looking forward to the playoffs now. But before we do that, just going to give a quick ad read for Game Over's Patreon. If you're looking for ways to help an upstart media company that employs over 30 young journalists and analysts across Canada, and if you have a few spare bucks lying around, you can head to our Patreon page at patreon.com/thegameovernetwork. There you'll find multiple tiers featuring different rewards and goodies for helping us grow. There's extra access, exclusive looks behind the scenes, Discord benefits, merch discounts, and opportunities to give us feedback where you can join us live for special shows as well, where you can interact with hosts, and we will be also launching more ways to improve your experience. And I think with the playoffs coming up, let us know if there's anything like in the Discord that you'd be interested in, if like some watch parties or stuff like that. We can definitely plan things like that if there's interest. So let us know what you want to see as Patreon perks. And if you're not able to spare a few dollars, we have a free tier available as well, so you don't miss out. If you really want to help us, you can click like and subscribe on YouTube, rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, and share our work on your social media of choice. That's patreon.com/thegameovernetwork. Now, into the second segment for today, we finally get to talk about potential playoff opponents. And it seems at this point that it will be like damn near impossible for the Sens to match up against the Florida Panthers. So I think I'm just going to discount them entirely, because the only way it could happen would be if somehow Tampa fell down to the wild card, and we know that's not happening. If anyone falls down, maybe the Sens could catch the Panthers, but they switch and then they don't play each other. So I think we throw that out the window. Most likely right now is the Toronto Maple Leafs. However, should note that Toronto and Tampa play each other tomorrow. If Tampa Bay wins that game, then they will be tied for first in the division. So it's not set in stone yet. We could still play Tampa while finishing in wildcard 1. And then, of course, Washington is still a possibility as well, because the Habs are 3 points behind the Sens, and they play each other head-to-head in the next game on Friday. If Montreal wins that game, they will be 1 point behind Ottawa. And from there, I think both teams would be clinched if that happens. And
yes, yeah,
and at that point, maybe even both teams will be resting some players. The last few games might not be exactly the full effort and the full lineups for both teams. So really, I could see if Montreal beats Ottawa on Friday, I could totally see us slipping below them. And to be honest, I don't have much of a problem with that. So we might as well just focus on one team first. If that happens, I would honestly be kind of optimistic facing the Washington Capitals in the first round. I don't know if I would list them as my most favorable opponent to match up against. But considering they are the President's Trophy winning team, but you just mentioned that there is that President's Trophy curse where those teams very rarely win the cup. Actually, you know what? You know what? The Jets are still ahead of Washington now that I take a quick look. But regardless, yeah, Jets have 3 more points at the moment.
I thought they clinched it. Never mind.
But regardless, I feel like Washington has been so far ahead of everyone in the Eastern Conference for so long now, and they've just been focusing on getting Ovi that goal record, that their play has kind of slipped, even though their record doesn't really show it so much, in the past couple months. I would have to fact check myself and make sure that this is 100% true, but I have Logan Thompson in fantasy hockey, and this guy has been allowing so many goddamn goals in the last few weeks, and absolutely killing my playoff run in fantasy. And then I've noticed when Charlie Lindgren goes in the net, he doesn't do much better either. So I think the matchup of Ullmark versus either Thompson or Lindgren is honestly really favorable for the Sens. Even though Logan Thompson was in the Vezina conversation early in the year, he's not anymore. Like, he had such a crappy last since the Four Nations break, pretty much crappy last 2 months, that he might not even get nominated for the Vezina. He might not. It's pretty close with some other goalies now. So specifically because of the goaltending matchup, I kind of like a Sens versus Washington series. I feel like they'd have a decent chance, but what are your thoughts, Mike?
Well, I remember in this season, obviously you can't always correlate regular season into playoffs, but I know in this year, whenever the Sens matched up against Washington, Washington won the season series, but I'm pretty sure almost every game went to overtime.
Yes,
Because you had
they
that
did.
Shabbat overtime winner, you had the Ovechkin overtime winner, and then you had another previous game where I believe it was a 0-0 shutout with an overtime win. I might be wrong about that.
No,
But
you're
either way,
correct.
I know
Yes.
that the Sens this year were very much a team that played up to their opposition. If it was a team that was above them in the standings, they'd usually perform very well. But if it was a team that was below them in the standings, there was a 50-50 chance that they'd play well or they would underperform.
That's what I like about being the
And
underdog is we don't have to play these crappy teams anymore where the Sens like just don't show up, right? They will bring their A
yes,
game against these top
yes,
teams.
and every player on the Sens has a reason to perform well. Because this is another thing that we know for some players on this team is that if you play extremely well in the playoffs, even if your regular season was underwhelming, that's how you get good contracts as well. So these
Hmm.
players that are about to get new contracts or like, have 1 or 2 years left, they're going to want to overperform in the playoffs so they can get that better deal and obviously a better livelihood for themselves. Another thing I wanted to point out for Washington as well. The reason you mentioned and I mentioned that the President's Trophy curse is a real thing, and the reasoning behind it is that teams that play consistently well from the start to the end of a season usually have a couple things on their side. One is really hot goaltending. Two is a really high shooting percentage across the whole team. And three is the idea of like streaks, right? Of going on a long period of time where everything is going your way. Whether it's your lines are clicking together, your defense is holding solid, or your goaltending is very good. Now, whenever it hits the playoffs, though, that's a different. Many reasons as to why. Penalties are harder to come by. Goaltending is there's a lot more pressure, right? Because the idea of you losing a game could be as serious as okay, we're switching goaltenders. You're no longer a starting goaltender for your team. So there's more pressure on the goaltending. The forward lines, you've been practicing for this the whole year, and yet you need to basically make these the best starting 4 to 7 games of your playoff career every time a new playoff run begins. So that only adds on to the pressure of the team that's the best team in the league or one of the best teams in the league, like Washington are. And as I said before, the Sens have been really good matching up against the Capitals so far this year, and there's not really a reason as to why. Because if you look to the positions, the Capitals outclass the Sens in everything, right? Better goaltending, better defense, better offense. You think it would just be a Capital sweep, and yet I think if the Sens play the Caps, they have a pretty good chance to, at least I would say, take the series to 6 or 7, right? The same way
Hmm.
that I remember when the Leafs first made
Yes.
the playoffs after their rebuilding phase, they faced the Caps and they lost in 6. But just like we're talking about the Sens right now, we didn't they didn't care about losing that series. It sucked in the sense of you want to win any playoff series you're a part of, but in the grand scheme of things, in the story and the history of your franchise, you don't really care about losing that series. You just want to do your best, and I feel like the Sens would really step up their game against the Capitals. And not to mention the Capitals have all the pressure on them. Nothing's on the Sens no matter what matchup they face.
Yeah, totally agree. You mentioned the season series, specifically all of those games being so damn close, makes it feel like we have a chance. And just to fact check myself on how I was saying, the Capitals have been allowing a lot more goals. Despite being top 5 in goals against, like goals allowed for the whole season, I pulled up since the Four Nations break, they have allowed 71 goals against in 22 games. They have scored 80 goals, so still positive, but that's
Yeah.
bottom 10 in the league in goals allowed since then, and still a 13-8-1 record over that time. But you can see the defensive play and the goaltending is slipping a little bit. Of course,
Okay.
the offense is
Yeah.
still the best in the league, which is the other thing we have to talk about is can the Sens shut down the Capitals offense?
Yes. And I'm not sure what more we could say about the Caps. I think I'm pretty happy matching up against the Caps, especially because You know what's the hilarious potential thing that could happen here? Which I think would be the most entertaining thing if you're a Sens fan.
Hmm.
Because if you're a true Sens fan, you hate the Leafs and the Habs equally. Probably the Leafs more, but definitely they're two of your most disliked teams in the league. And as we also know, the Leafs have some recent trauma against facing off against the Canadiens in the playoffs in the first round.
Yeah.
If the Leafs were to continue winning and the Habs were to continue winning, the Sens would face off against Washington, and the Leafs would face the Habs in the first round. While it would be hilarious to see the Leafs play the Sens and the Sens were to win in the first round, it would be so much funnier to see the Leafs lose to the Habs again. Again. In another time where the Leafs are the favorite, right? And another time where you'll probably have the predictor saying, oh, Leafs are going to win this series. I know the context is different. The Habs are doing a lot better this year than they did during the bubble year where they faced off against the Leafs. But holy, that would be so entertaining to watch. That would be an immaculate hate watch in between the Sens games. I would be tuning into those games just as I was today, where I wouldn't be wanting the Habs to win. I'd be wanting the Leafs to lose.
Yeah.
And it would be so entertaining.
The
Because then,
one
then
time-
you can win one of two ways.
The one time that I've been cheering for the Habs was in the bubble when they played the Leafs in that playoff series. That was one of the funniest playoff series I've ever seen, with how the first 4 games the Habs looked like shit entirely, and then they
Well, except for the first game, because
I guess
Habs
so.
did win
But then
first
the
game.
next 3 after that, the Leafs pretty much
they
smoked them.
look like
And
ass.
then they just totally screwed it up, and I feel like there would be potential for that to happen again. So that's a very good point, is that like pretty much the only scenario in which I'd be happy with Montreal making it farther than the Sens in the playoffs is if the Sens face Washington and Montreal faces Toronto. Then we could lose, and who cares? As long as Montreal beats the Leafs, that would be very funny. Like, as long as Montreal doesn't go on way farther than that and get a
another Stanley Cup
run to the
beating
finals
Leafs.
again, you know, then that would suck. But you are right that it results in a very funny scenario. But since we're talking about the Leafs, we might as well go to how the Sens would match up against the Leafs, or how we feel about that potential matchup.
Basically, if every team goes 500 from now on, wins as many games as they lose, whatever, gets the same amount of points.
Yeah, if everyone stays in the same seeding, right?
Yes, then the Sens will be facing the Leafs.
So it's the most likely.
Yes, it's the most likely in terms of just statistics, though, you know, we'll see how everything goes. The Sens and the Leafs, I actually probably have more confidence in the Sens beating the Leafs than any other team.
That's fair.
And the reasoning I have behind this,
the regular season, right?
Yeah, because they always play them so well in the regular season. But then again, we've seen this before, especially for the older Sens fans in the audience. We know what it's like to outplay the Leafs in the regular season and lose to them in the playoffs. But the circumstances are completely the opposite this time around. It's not the Sens who are the team who are above the Leafs in the standings. It's the other way around. It's the Leafs who are the better team. And the pressure of being the team who should be winning, there is like that element of pressure. Add on to the fact that the Leafs have had such poor, first round success in recent years, aside from their win against Tampa a couple years back. And I think the Sens have a really good shot to beat the Leafs. Now, in how many games, I don't know. The truly meme way to would be in 7. Just like the Leafs have lost every other time they've faced Boston, Montreal, in Columbus, whatever. And I just think they match up really well, especially because the one thing I think the Sens have a really, it would be different if the Sens faced the Leafs in the playoffs in previous years for both teams. But I think this year, even with the additions that the Leafs have made during the trade deadline, I think the Sens are still a team that have more playoff players, to put it mildly. Not that Matthews isn't a playoff player,
He's not. I'll say it. Matthews is not a playoff player. I'm gonna go as far as
he's a great player, though.
He's a great player,
he could
but
be a playoff player.
Not impressive in the playoffs. He hasn't shown it.
That's true.
Maybe he will this year.
Statistically, he hasn't been the same player as he is during the regular season. I don't think that's even an argument. Same thing with Marner. Tavares is a player who likes to step up. Obviously, he had that injury a couple years back that prevented him from really stepping up in that Montreal series. But I just think that
is their real playoff performer from what I've seen. He's the
Yes,
guy
yeah.
who has
He's
good
the guy you
stats
have to worry
every
about,
year,
100%.
Win
Yeah,
or lose. Yeah.
And not to mention the goaltending for the Leafs have been pretty good recently. So that's another thing you got to worry about. But we've seen the Leafs have good goaltending in a playoff series and lose. And the Montreal series was the biggest testament of that. That was a series where they had like a really good Jack Campbell, from what I remember, and Carey Price just outplayed him, right?
Yeah.
And the worry I think on our side is that Ullmark hasn't really been a great playoff goaltender in his history as a playoff goaltender. But we didn't sign him to be a, well, I guess we did sign him to be a playoff goaltender, but you get what I mean. We signed him to get to the playoffs because we haven't for so long. So I'm, as long as Ullmark plays all right, as long as Ullmark isn't the reason we lose the Leafs series, I think the Sens will at least take the Leafs to 6. Now, whether they win in 6 or win in 7, I just think that entirely has to do whether our players stay healthy, whether Tkachuk plays as we hope. We always thought of Tkachuk as the perfect playoff player. So we hope that comes to fruition. We hope Stützle regains his form. In recent games, he hasn't been the Stützle we've been hoping for point-wise. And I think the Sens can really bring it to the Leafs. And I think the Leafs fans are scared of the Sens.
Yeah, that's the funniest part, is just how the fan bases are going to react to being finally matched up against each other for the first time in 20 years.
Yes, yeah, and even if the Sens lose to the Leafs in 5 games, in 4 games, in 6 games, they can talk as much, shit as they want. It's gonna suck. It's gonna sting a little bit more than if we were to lose to Washington or lose to Tampa. But I just think at the same time, we can very easily point to the Leafs as in, like, give us a couple years, and we'll meet up again, and we'll see where we each stand. It's very much like we're just starting, where the Leafs are potentially even coming towards, not maybe not the end, but like the plateau to downward trajectory. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we beat them, it's the funniest thing ever. And if we lose to them, we can still be like, that's okay. Our team had a great season regardless.
And a blessing in disguise is them beating Tampa, because it would have been so much worse if we were the first team that they beat.
Yeah, good point.
If they had still had the first round drought, right?
Yes.
But then a lot of things might have changed, right? If they didn't beat Tampa, there might have been some more management changes, player changes in Toronto. So that's an if that could spiral into an entire different multiverse here. I think we stick with what we got, but I'm just really happy that they did beat Tampa, so they can't even hold the fact that, like, yeah, we didn't win a first round since 2004, but we beat you. Like, that would be the worst. And I'm happy
I'll be really annoyed
I'll
be really annoyed if the fans end up being like, "Oh, we beat you in the playoffs again, 5-0 against you." It's like the games and the series from 20 years ago literally have no relevancy. Like, it's
and
such
not to
a
mention
different
too, we can
situation.
still say we've gone deeper than you have in the past 20 years, which is still true.
Yeah, they got to get to a conference final and then they can talk to us.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the best way. Like, if any of you Sens fans are watching this live or later, if we end up facing the Leafs and the Leafs beat us, don't get mad, because you can unless in this playoff they reach the conference final, you still have something over them.
Yeah, they I believe in their entire existence they've never won 3 playoff rounds. When they were winning
because
cups,
of how
it was
limited
still
the divisions were. Yeah.
it was the original 6 I believe that was it. Those were the only teams when they were winning cups. So they haven't been able to get it done. I feel like when I look at the Leafs on paper and in terms of their stats, their performance this season, I don't feel like I can pick something out like I can with Washington, where I say their defense and their goaltending has slipped lately. Maybe that will continue in the playoffs. I feel like I can't really point out a specific weakness, because they have done a pretty good job of rounding out the roster this year with like guys like Tanev and picking up better goaltending and Stolars. However, there is just that first round magic that everyone who plays the Leafs in the first round just gets, no matter what. Even Tampa Bay, who did lose to them, they beat them the year before. So it took 2 tries for the Leafs to beat Tampa Bay in the first round. Boston beating them twice, Montreal beating them once. What was the one? There was another one in the Washington one the first time. So
yes, and then the Columbus one too. Let's not forget the Columbus one. In the qualifying
not even the first
round,
round, but like round 0 or whatever, the qualifying round. So there's just magic when you play the Leafs in round 1, and it feels like no matter what team you are, whether you're an underdog or whether the Leafs are the underdog, there's like a good chance that the Leafs lose the first round. So I feel like I can't look at them on paper and say, oh yeah, we can easily beat them because we're better than them at this. It's just like, other than the season series, because we've played very well against them this season, and we have been able to shut down Matthews and Marner very well in those games, and even Nylander and Tavares too, because I think the Leafs only scored 3 goals on us in 3 games, something like that. So That, I guess that's the one thing, is that specifically our performance against them this year, of any of the potential opponents, we had the best record in the regular season against the Leafs. So I would say that's the one thing to look forward to, is that we've played them pretty well this year.
Yeah, and I think that's enough to say about the Leafs. I think it's just fair to
Mm,
say that facing off the Leafs would lead to the most painful loss, but the beating them would lead to the most satisfying victory.
yeah, the funny potential is through the roof. The
Yeah.
satisfying potential is through the roof, and also the devastating and cringe when you lose is also through the roof. The potential for those two. So it would be the most high stakes. It would probably be the most entertaining. It would either sting like crazy losing to them, or it would be the funniest thing ever. So I say bring it on. Hopefully, the organization can do a pretty good job of keeping Leafs fans out of the building, because I do think it would really suck to have.
Yes,
It would suck to have the first playoff games in 8 years in Ottawa just to be
be all
filled
Leafs
with
fans.
Leafs fans. Like it would be like, if we met them in the second round, I wouldn't care. But I kind of want to just have a first round appearance without them being in our faces the whole time. Like just leave us alone for a little bit and let us play against like Washington or Tampa and just cheer our team on with like 100% or like
Yes.
95% Sens
Yeah.
fans in the building. Like that's the one thing, is I really don't want it to be swamped with Leafs fans for the first playoffs in 8 years.
But at the same time, the same way as it is in the regular season, imagine you fill the CTC with Leafs fans and you sweep the Leafs. That
Yeah, but
would be
I'd rather Sens fans be in the building for
no,
the
no, no.
wins, you know?
I
So
do agree with you. I'm just saying that like I could totally see, unfortunately, the CTC fill with Leafs fans because that's how it's been. Because they can't, because unfortunately the Scotiabank whatever the Leafs home ice is, their rink unfortunately seems to be either too expensive for them. It's better price for them to travel and take a ticket here.
a lot of them
I,
live here too. Is the
not to
thing.
mention, yeah, there's a lot of Leafs fans who are Ottawa locals as well. But I just think that it in the same vein of seeing the Leafs face the Canadians and lose, seeing lots of Leafs fans just like be reminded of the trauma of the first round losses live in person at the CTC would be pretty nice.
I think they would crash out. I think there would be a bunch of drunk guys
No, yeah.
just like
If the
losing their
Leafs
minds and
lose,
getting in
if the Leafs
fights.
lose this first round to the Sens in significant fashion, I do not see
There's
any
gonna
Leafs
be
fans being rational.
Yeah, there's gonna be people getting like
Unfortunately.
arrested and like kicked out of the arena and stuff. Like if the Sens win like on home ice with a bunch of Leafs fans in the building, it would be a mess. It would be an absolute mess.
And I
But
think let's talk about the final 1/2. I mean, you said we're not going to talk about Florida, and I think I agree. I think with the way the standings are shaping out, Florida, it's going to be likely a Florida Toronto or Florida Tampa matchup based on how
yeah.
the top two position goes. But I think we should move on and talk about Tampa
Yeah,
now.
I'm gonna hit the buzzer for third period. We'll just go right into it though,
Yeah.
because we're getting longer into the show. We'll call
Yeah,
it the
well,
third period now. Gonna talk about the potential Tampa matchup, which I think I would rank them as the scariest team to face.
Yes, yeah.
Just because even though they have had some first round exits lately, and they did have that hilarious series where they got swept by Columbus in the first round, but that was
while back.
before they won cups. But that was before their current core managed to break through and win cups. So they've learned how to win. The Washington Capitals' current core hasn't really learned how to win, other than
Yeah, they're still
Ovechkin.
fresh aside from
Their
Ovi.
their
Yeah.
team has changed like crazy since 2018 when they won the cup. Like it's Ovechkin and John Carlson and not really many other guys who are still around. Maybe a couple of bottom six
But
guys.
Tampa are all the same guys.
Tampa is all the same guys, and they've won more recently. So I think that automatically makes it the scariest, even if you think that Washington or Toronto like look better on paper. Tampa, out of these three teams, is the team that we've seen get it done the most, with 2 back-to-back cup wins and making the finals in the 3rd consecutive year as well, and losing to Colorado. So that's got to be the toughest matchup for sure, right?
Yes, I don't think it's like The only bright side in facing off against Tampa is for some reason Vasilevsky does not play good against the Sens. Like there's that stat where I think he has a below 900 save percentage in his games against the Sens.
That's
Although
crazy.
although the caveat is that is in the regular season, right? And we know playoff Vasilevsky is an entirely different animal.
He
A
kind of
lot.
got lit up in his last couple playoff appearances, but I think those were both. That was against Florida and against Toronto, I think.
Yeah,
So
two high scoring teams, two teams
Exactly.
that have the capability to really shell people. So I'm not too, distracted by that. I think the one thing about Tampa that makes me so afraid is the fact that not only have they been doing better recently, they're a team that has been doing pretty well in the injury front, basically the all of
yeah,
2025
very
so far.
healthy.
There's a very healthy team. Kucherov's on fire. I hate facing off against Brandon Hagel. He's just annoying. There's just so
Oh
many
God,
elements of
playoff Brandon Hagel.
yeah,
Oh,
playoff Brandon Hagel.
Jesus.
There's just so many elements of facing off against Tampa that just annoys you, and not to mention likely they're going to beat you too. So I just think it's safe to say that in that matchup against Tampa, that's probably the least. Not to mention there's no storylines with it too.
Yeah.
Washington is a team that, get Ovi another cup. He broke the record, relatively new core of the roster, Logan Thompson being the new star goalie. Toronto's obviously Toronto. We talked all about their storylines. Even if we were to somehow face Florida, which is probably not going to happen, you have the Battle of the Kachucks, right? And the
Yeah, and
previous cup
defending champs. Yeah.
Yeah, so the matchup against Tampa is basically just like, oh wow, a really good team the Sens are going to have a tough time against. Like it's kind of the only even minor storyline is Nick Paul. Hi Nick Paul, how you doing?
Oh God,
Loved you. I
Nick
wish you were still with us.
Nick Paul
Um,
revenge tour. You trade him away, you finally make the playoffs, and then he dunks on you in the playoffs. Especially a guy who we could have probably just kept this whole time if we
Yeah.
gave him a decent contract. Like what did we even get out
Matthew
of that
Joseph
trade?
and a
Was it
pick.
was Joseph, yeah. And
And-
that ended up being nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So,
So that would
the only thing I would say about them facing off against Tampa is that has the least entertainment value from a more basic standpoint, unless the games get really chippy and they have that rivalry of the two teams that came into the league together that they probably should have. The only thing about that I could see is that I wouldn't mind is that if you lose to them, you're not bothered, right?
Yeah.
That would be the team where, like, if I lose to Washington, I'm disappointed because they've been playing good against Washington all year, but in retrospect, they're one of the best teams in the league. I wouldn't be that mad. If they lost to Tampa, I'd just be a little sad. Like,
Yeah.
not mad, just a little sad of like, man, why did we match up against Tampa? And why and they're a team just like Washington on paper. They're better at the Sens in every position, right? So I wouldn't be too annoyed in the sense. It's just that would definitely be the least the least happiness in a series from an outside perspective. No matter
Yeah.
unless they beat them. Unless they beat them, then that's a great win. That's a great team to beat.
That's the thing, is because I think Washington has the most upset potential. Toronto has the biggest investment, the biggest emotional investment between the two fan bases, and then Tampa is just kind of like whatever. Like
If we beat them, great. If we lose
Yeah.
to them, well, shit.
Yeah, it's like I'm not confident going against them, and I also it's not very interesting, like you said, from a storyline standpoint. It's just basically the only storyline is, can Tampa get back out of the first round after a couple years of losing in it?
Yeah, can they kind of bump out of their minor slump they've had in recent years?
And yeah, I mentioned Vasilevsky kind of doing poorly in the last two playoff years. It's funny because he still has a actually wait, I'm looking at this wrong. I don't know what his overall. Yeah, he still has a 920 save percentage in his whole playoff career, despite the last 2 years were an 897 save percentage and an 875 in the last
It's
two
because
first
he's
rounds.
had like 925s in the majority of his
Exactly.
career.
So even though he's had a bit of a slip up, the track record overall is still just amazing. So
Basically, you hope that the bad Vasilevsky we've seen in the regular season mixes with the recent Vasilevsky, like recent playoff form, not recent regular season form, and that mixes up into an 890 Vas, because that would be like the perfect, that would be not the win condition, but that'd be a win condition for the Sens in the series. It's just Vasilevsky not playing up to par.
it's by far the hardest
can't
goaltending
count on
matchup for Ullmark, is because those other two teams have been going with the tandem route of, Thompson and Lindgren splitting starts. They're both like 1B style goalies, and Woll and Stolarz being the same thing, where if you start them 7 games in a row in a 7-game playoff series, how are they going to hold up compared to those compared to the regular season where they're switching in and out every single game,
Yeah,
one game
yeah.
on, one game off. I wouldn't even be surprised if either of those teams continues to do that in the playoffs, just because that's what they've been used to. Whereas Linus Ullmark, we've seen him go on long winning streaks this season, like 3 separate times. So I feel like the Sens have the goaltending edge over both those other teams, even though those teams' goalies have performed good this season. But against Vasilevsky, it's just like if Vasilevsky outduels Linus Ullmark, you just shrug and say, well, that's what we expected to happen, right?
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a disappointment in the Sens at all because we just unfortunately the Atlantic Division is still kind of in that stacked phase where most teams are really goddamn good. Even if you were to expand that to the Eastern, because we might face Washington, I would still probably say that the best teams in the West are still the ones more likely, I would say, to win the Cup. But I just still think that the East is super strong, and because you're a wildcard team, you're going to be facing a good team in the first round no matter what. I think Tampa is just the one where you just raise your arms and you say, well, shit, at least we made the playoffs if you lose. But if you win, that could be the great start to a deep playoff run.
Mm-hmm. And I would probably say as well, even though they're the team I'd least like to face out of those 3, I would probably rather face Tampa than the Florida Panthers, even though they're kind of limping into the playoffs with a bunch of injured players.
Yeah.
The defending champs, they're hungry for another run, and the Sens have been getting like shit kicked by them for the last 2 games. Or actually, even the first game of the season, it was the home opener. Ullmark stole that game.
Yes.
And Forsberg stole the game this past week against the Panthers, and then the game in the middle right before the Four Nations break, we got outshot 50-20 or something like that, and it was a blowout. So every game against Florida, we've been completely dominated.
We've won 2, but not in a way of us being the better team.
The Panthers in those 3 games, or is it 4 against the Panthers, or only 3?
I think it's 4, right? Because it's in the division.
Well, you might be right, but I'm forgetting. So I only remember 3 games against the Panthers. I remember we played Tampa 4 times. I know that for sure. But anyway, my point is that against Tampa, we've had some games where they outplayed us, and we've had other games where it was close, and we've beat Tampa twice. I think in 3 that I can remember against Florida, we won 2 of them, but we got absolutely dominated in all of them, despite winning 2 of them. So Florida scares me more than Tampa Bay.
Yeah, the only thing about Florida that I think could be a benefit to the Sens, even though the likelihood of them facing Florida is so minute that I don't think we have to go into too much detail.
Yeah, it's just that
them.
I would rather face Tampa than them.
Yeah. But what I would definitely say about Florida is that back-to-back cup runs is near impossible just for the sake of durability of your players. We're seeing that in the injuries of the players on Florida's team, as well as the Ekblad suspension, which will take them out a majority of that Florida series. That is actually a key factor. They're missing their best right-handed defenseman, or one of their best defensemen. And I just think that Florida in the past few months, despite the fact that they did already qualify for the playoffs, it's not that sort of, oh, we're resting players and we're squeaking by. I'm sensing a little bit of underlying just general tiredness from the Panthers. And I think that's something that the Sens could take advantage of if they face them, or anyone who faces them in the first round. But we'll have to wait and see. It might just be a scenario where the Panthers, just as soon as the playoffs start, they just turn back into one of the best teams in the league. But as we all know, the Tampa was notable because they won the back-to-back playoffs in an era where back-to-backs are nearly impossible with the schedules that people have, right? Yeah. With how durable you have to be just as an overall team, right? Especially your stars and your goalie. So I'm not as agreeing with you that Tampa is the tougher, or that Florida's the tougher matchup. I still am probably leaning towards Tampa would be the hardest matchup for the Sens overall.
That's fair. I think I'm just weighting the season series very heavily, which is funny because we won the season series against the Panthers, but none of those games the Sens were confident better wins.
Team. They were not confident wins.
Whereas against Tampa, the wins
and the Leafs.
Against Tampa, the first win early in the season, I think, was 5-4 for the Sens.
It was a close win, but it was a close one.
But they got a big lead. I think it was 5-2, and then Tampa gets a couple goals back, and then it was close in the third period. And then those 2 games in Tampa, they were both close, but then Tampa just pulled away in the third period of both of them. And then only the most recent one did the Lightning just dominate the Sens, and the Sens still won. So, just for how the season series have gone, I'm a little more comfortable against Tampa than Florida, which is funny because we have 2 wins against each of them. But That's just how it goes. So sometimes you win when you don't deserve it, and sometimes you lose when you deserve to win.
Yep. And honestly, if there's another thing about the playoffs too that you really have to factor in, the better team doesn't always win the series. Sometimes you just have the better goalie. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just have the luck on your side. Like, one thing I'd point to is this the series of the Leafs when they beat Tampa and won their first round in like 20 years or whatever. That series, I was watching it, hate watching it, of course, very heavily, and I was of the opinion that the Leafs were not the better team. They
Yeah,
just
that series was Vasilevsky playing like crap. That
This
was it.
Vasilevsky playing like crap. John Cooper out coaching the shit out of Sheldon Keefe. I think it was Sheldon Keefe at the time. But the Leafs getting like they had two different moments, like two different late scoring goals that won them games, because Vasilevsky turned into a pumpkin, and they also had like a couple of games where it was very evident that the bounces, the play was on their side. So, and I think it was very evident as well because as soon as they faced Florida, they got spanked. They got completely just nope, get out of the playoffs. You win one game, congrats, gentleman sweep. You're out. You're out. So, and they haven't won another round since. So, I think that the Sens being the better team is obviously what you want. It's the best way to win a playoff series. But also, if Ullmark just redeems himself off his previous series whenever he faced off against Florida and got reverse swept, he didn't play every game, but that was the last series he was a part of in the playoffs. If he can redeem himself and have like a 910, 920 save percentage in the playoffs and just win the Sens series on his own, we can point to it the same way we pointed to the games against Florida earlier this year, where it's like, yeah, they weren't the better team, but the goalie is a member of your team. You know, the goalie is or can be the most important member of your team. And if Ullmark can, backpack the Sens to a series win, we're not going to say, man, we can do that every round unless he turns into Carey Price in the bubble. But that's something that you can hang your hat on, and that's very much something you can point to that the Sens targeted and improved on. That's like that was very much a focus to go to the playoffs with a great goalie. So we'll see how it goes in the end, because it's nice to say, not with any doubt, that we're going to see Ullmark in a Sens jersey in the playoffs. I have to hold to my bet. I have to find my tweet. I made a tweet, I think, way back when. I might have even just said it vocally. That if the Sens make the playoffs this year and Ullmark is a key factor in doing so, I have a reverse retro jersey with no name or number on the back. I'm gonna get Ullmark on
Oh,
it now.
you have to do it. You have to do
Yeah.
it now.
So
Yep.
the only downside is I'm not sure if the reverse retro lettering is still around. We'll see. Just because obviously they're not, you can't get reverse retro jerseys anymore. But I'm gonna look into the CTC and see, and if I can, I'll get it.
Yeah. Uh, I think that's a pretty good way to wrap it up for tonight, as we're almost at the hour mark, and
Yep.
not a lot going on in chat tonight. I hope that we can get some more
There
comments
is
after the fact. I know some people tune in after the fact when it's not live
Yeah, or
anymore,
just watch
so.
it afterwards. I think there's one thing that I'll make up, not as a question, but as one topic. Um, this could be someone obvious, or this could be someone a little bit less obvious. Who do you think, if you had to pick one player, was not necessarily the reason the Sens made it into the playoffs, but a huge reason as to why the Sens made it into the playoffs?
Uh,
Someone you'd
hmm.
feel like highlighting right now.
Honestly, David Perron, like
Very good.
because
Very
we
good shout.
wrote him off in the first half of the season, and I didn't like the signing from the get-go, but he's proven me wrong in terms of actually still being able to be a good contributing top six forward, and
Yep.
not just the production, but he plays really hard. He's an absolute hound on the puck, and he helped re-energize Drake Batherson along with Dylan Cousins as well. So if we didn't have him, like if he was still injured for the rest of the year, it's harder for the Sens to
They
get
might
to where
not
they are
even make the
now.
playoffs. I
Yeah.
think the goals he scored were that important, and the role he played on the second line was that important.
Yeah, like if he was still injured, maybe Fabian Zetterlund slots into where
Yeah, we'll
Perron
see.
was.
Yeah, things could have changed, yeah.
But we know that it took Zetterlund a long time to get the monkey off his back in terms of goal scoring. So
Yeah, I
it
just
might
get
not have.
accustomed.
So it might not have necessarily been as good if David Perron wasn't in that spot.
I think I know who mine is, and it's one that was brought up on Twitter not too long ago. It's someone who's currently not in the Sens roster.
Yeah.
It's Levi
Marilainen.
Marilinen.
Yeah, fair enough.
The Sens were in the shitter in early November, so much so that Montreal fans and Wings fans were already counting the Sens out for the playoffs, and also suck it. And it was very much just a moment of like, what can the Sens do? Because every time they've had goalie injuries and defense injuries, they've always collapsed. That's how it's always gone over the past couple of years. And they still didn't have a great November. But whenever December came along, Ullmark is out, and Meriläinen and Forsberg just held the fort down, especially Meriläinen being the prospect who'd never had any NHL experience. He went 8-3-1. He had like a 920 save percentage or something crazy throughout all those games, and 3 shutouts. And I'm pretty sure, obviously, including the back-to-back shutouts the Sens had not too long ago, the Sens are one of the best, or the best team in the league for shutouts right now. And Levi Meriläinen is a huge factor of that. So I just want to give him his props. It's a shame he's not going to get playoff games this year, but it makes me so comfortable in him being the backup next year. I mean, obviously, I think Forsberg still, deserves NHL time. I think he's proven himself as a very capable backup goalie. And the contract he has with the Sens right now, I wouldn't really say is an overpay. I think it's pretty fair for his services. Maybe it's a little bit of an overpay because they were paying him as the number one at the time whenever he got that contract. But I just feel like if he were to go this offseason, get a bag somewhere else, or just find another place for him to play, it would be sad because I think Forsberg earned his backup position here in Ottawa when he filled in a couple years ago and had a great year. I just think that Levi Meriläinen is the future of the Sens. The same, like obviously Ullmark is the future of the Sens, but Levi's the more like long-term future of the Sens.
100%.
He could very much be the next person to follow up Ullmark, and they don't have that worry of we're gonna grow the forward core, but we're gonna have to find that new goalie. We have our new goalie, and and it's great to see him still cooking and still doing great in the minors. Because I was really worried that this might be like a Hamburglar scenario where he just has a good run, goes back to the minors, and becomes an average goalie again. But no, he's actually doing very, very well. So I want to give full props to Levi. I know you weren't around here long, buddy, but you did great. And you deserve as much respect as the other goalies do when it comes to the Sens earning their playoff position.
Yeah, I kind of hope that he gets one more game at the end of the season here, just so we can see him one more time, because he was such a big part of the season despite only playing that certain number of games. He kept us alive and gave us
12 games.
He kept us alive in that time and gave us momentum to head forward towards the playoffs, because like you said, when Ullmark got injured and it was down to Meriläinen and Forsberg, I don't think we were that close to the playoffs. But then you get Levi Meriläinen going like an 8-3-1 or something like that, whatever it was, with 3 shutouts, and then all of a sudden you're in it. So yeah, huge. He's the unsung hero for sure. I kind of hope that he gets to play one of these last couple games. Just use a call up on him, just because, just to give him one more game as a thank you for keeping us in it earlier in the year.
And obviously there is also a very, very slight chance we might see Levi, because honestly, based on how Forsberg's been very inconsistent this year, either the best goalie in the world or lets in 4 goals. I think that if Ullmark or Forsberg get injured, right? Let's say that Ullmark gets injured. I think you put Meriläinen in to start immediately. I know it might be a bit of a confidence hit for Forsberg.
I don't think the coach would do it, but I think most
me
fans
neither.
would
But
want
I
it.
think that would be the right call. As opposed to, but if Forsberg gets injured, you just bring Meriläinen up as the backup, and you give Ullmark, his space to try, right? Because that's what you signed him to that contract for. I just want to give props to Meriläinen. Perron's a great shout-out too, though. He was definitely like the guy who reinvigorated the forward core towards the end of the year, while Levi was more like mid-year preventing a collapse.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I like that, the little shout out for Meriläinen there, because he was a huge part of the season.
I know that we're in the last period. One chatter came in and just started talking. Matthew Anktil.
Oh, Matthew, he's here.
Yeah, he mentioned we're playoff bound thanks to Green, and he doesn't agree with me with Levi in the playoffs. That's fair. He is completely new to it, but
only if injury requires it.
I think we can also fully say I think it's also fair for us to grade Travis Green now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think damn near no one liked the hire in Ottawa, and
no one liked the hire
we're all
across
eating
the league.
crow. Yeah,
I mean,
we're
maybe
all
some,
eating crow.
maybe some analysts and like reporters maybe enjoyed it just because Green did do some good during his time with Canucks, but no, like looking at Green's previous tenure, I think every Sens fan even looked at Green's hire as like a hope it works. Like
he only had
there wasn't
one
much
good
confidence
year
in it.
with
Yeah,
with Vancouver, right? So he at least he gets that really good year in the first year with the Sens right away to start off on a good note. And I think he's instilled a good winning culture in this team, got them playing better defensive hockey to
that's like
hopefully set them forward for the future, and we can have many more good years with Travis Green as the coach.
because the one thing about Green that I'm never going to say anything bad about is that he turned the Sens team that had very minor defensive changes in terms of their lineup. They didn't have many defensive their biggest defensive change was Chikrin to Jensen, and aside from that, the roster stayed basically the same. And he turned this team that was pretty bad defensively to one of the better defensive teams in the league. And I think that single-handedly boosted the Sens up by 10 points, along with the better goaltending, which obviously Staios targeted during the offseason. But I want to give full credit to Green. Yeah, we might not be seeing as many of those 6, 7, 8 goal games as we did last couple of years, but I don't think anyone cares.
It's funny that we still had a couple of games like that this season.
But they were early on too.
With an 8-7 win early in the year, and
like,
there was that 6-5 game with the Bruins. But for the most part, low scoring defensive hockey, which is how you win in the playoffs, and that's
that's
really
such a great,
encouraging as we are finally heading back to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think this is a great place to end it too, because if there's one thing that I can say for these next couple of games, I'm just really curious to see which player ends the season great and carries that on into the postseason. Like, I know it's only a 4-game stretch, so we're not going to have anyone score like 10 points or whatever, unless we really start beating teams up. But I'm curious to see, because I'd love to see Stützle get hot again. I'd love to see anyone in our middle six get hot. I would argue that probably the one that has been the best recently is really Greg. But I'd love to see Cousins get back to the form that he was whenever he first got signed. Not that he's been bad. I just think that, he's
slowed down a bit.
Yeah, he slowed down a little bit, but he's also not been like the reason we've been losing games. And I think the last little bit that I'll say is I think the more Clevin, Matt, and Paolo play in these last 4 games, the better they'll look to start the playoffs. They weren't good tonight, as I said earlier, but now you have that space to kind of let them learn more about each other aside from at the NHL level, with the goal of you're going to be the third pair on a playoff team. You need to, play smart, play safe, you'll be fine.
They had a bad night tonight, but they have to be the third pairing going into the playoffs.
Yes.
I would say give Nick Jensen some rest. Just throw Hamonic back in there with Chabot. And hell, give Chabot some rest a little bit in terms of lower ice time, and just play Clevin and Matt and Paolo for like second pair ice time just to give them some more reps together heading into the playoffs. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that'll do it for tonight. The Sens are back in the playoffs. We've got 4 more regular season games, which should be interesting to see as some players will be resting. Maybe we'll get some call-ups as well. Maybe we'll even see like Stephen Halliday get called up or something. I think that could be interesting.
Problem with the Sens is their cap room isn't a lot. So they actually can't fool around with the scratches too much. If they are to rest players, they basically just have to throw in Hamonic and Gilbert, and then maybe
we might see someone
players.
11-7, eh?
Yeah, which again, not too annoyed when you made the playoffs. I just think that the only way for the Sens truly to call up more players from the minors and give them a shot is that if you put players like on LTIR.
Yeah.
Which
you're not going to do because they have to be out for a minimum of 2 weeks.
Yeah, which it's too late for. So they can shift the lineup up a little, but they can't take away and bring up too many players.
But yeah, I'll be back on Friday for the game against Montreal. We'll have a crossover stream with Game Over Montreal, which should be really fun. I think if Montreal wins that game, they will clinch. So it might be a celebratory show for them, or it'll be us being able to finally talk some shit about them if we beat them. For the first time this year. It's going to be a little
I'm glad we're not facing Montreal in the first round, because that would be another one I wouldn't
they're
want to
too
have.
hot right now. Honestly, if for the higher seeds, you would probably rather face Ottawa than Montreal, just because Montreal's been on such a heater.
Top 3 teams I wouldn't want to face in the first round across the whole league: Blues, Canadiens, Avalanche. Those are the 3 that I would be like, all right, I throw in the towel, Yeah, you take the sweep. I'm not even gonna play you. Move
The
on.
teams with the second half heaters. The Sens have kind of been one of those teams with like one of the best records in the last few
Yeah,
months.
but it's not the same
they're
as
not
Montreal
like,
and St. Louis.
yeah,
They're on a different level.
they're not winning in such like convincing fashion with like high scoring wins and stuff like that. It's more like grinding out defensive wins. So yeah, that'll be fun crossing over with the Montreal show on Friday. We'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Have a good night, everyone.